Ahmed adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, the morning light filtering through the high-rise windows of their apartment in downtown Dubai. Outside, the skyline shimmered in the desert heat, the Burj Khalifa towering like a needle piercing the sky. Everything looked perfect, but nothing inside the apartment felt quite right. Layla, his wife of 2 years, had already left for work at the design firm she co-owned in Business Bay. Zayed, her 17-year-old son from a previous marriage, was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. The two barely spoke unless absolutely necessary, and even then, it was more of a truce than a conversation. Ahmed took a deep breath. Today, he had promised himself he would try again. Make peace. Extend his hand. Not as a replacement father, but as someone who cared. He brewed Arabic coffee, the kind Zayed liked, and set it quietly at the breakfast bar. Then he knocked on the teen's door. Zayed. Good morning. There's coffee for you. A pause. Then the door creaked open just slightly. Zayed's voice came, low but sharp. You don't have to pretend. You're not my dad. The door shut again. Ahmed stood frozen, the bitterness of the words cutting through him more than the heat ever could. Later that day, Layla returned home to find the tension between them thicker than usual. As they sat for dinner, Ahmed silent, Zayed scrolling on his phone, Layla forcing conversation, she finally said it. He needs your support, Ahmed. Especially now. University applications aren't cheap. He's my son. Ahmed looked at her, measured and calm. And I'm your husband. Respect is a two-way street, Layla. I've tried. Zayed scoffed, without looking up. You tried? You show up with your rules and expect me to bow. You're just another guy who walked into our life. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Ahmed stood by the balcony overlooking the quiet lights of Sheikh Zayed Road. He wasn't sure how much more he could take. But something in his gut told him, this wasn't just about tuition fees or teenage rebellion. Something deeper was brewing beneath Zayed's resentment. And it had nothing to do with coffee. The following morning, the routine repeated itself with clinical precision. Layla kissed Ahmed on the cheek, grabbing her purse and files before rushing out the door. Zayed emerged from his room an hour later, disheveled and wordless, grabbing a piece of toast and vanishing just as quickly. Ahmed sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee slowly. The silence of the apartment had a weight to it. He didn't expect a thank you, not even a nod. But he needed to understand what had turned a boy into a storm. Later that week, Ahmed returned home early from work. Layla had a late meeting, and the apartment was unusually quiet. As he passed Zayed's door, he noticed it was slightly ajar. That was rare. The boy usually guarded his room like a fortress. Inside, a faint blue glow from the laptop cast shadows across the messy bed. Ahmed wasn't one to invade privacy. But something caught his eye on the desk, a torn photograph half sticking out of a notebook. Curiosity edged out restraint. He pulled it gently. It was an old family photo. Layla, Zayed, and a man who looked nothing like Ahmed. The original husband. The father. But it wasn't just nostalgia that made Ahmed pause. There were words scribbled on the back in bold red pen. He was better than you'll ever be. Ahmed felt a chill run through him. Later that evening, he confronted Layla. Who was he, Layla? His father. I don't even know his name. She hesitated. His name was Kareem. He died when Zayed was 10. Car accident. It was complicated. Complicated how? She avoided his eyes. Zayed saw it. The whole thing. He was in the back seat. Ahmed froze. And you never told me this? I didn't think it mattered. It matters, Layla. Everything makes sense now. The anger, the distance. That night, for the first time, Ahmed didn't sleep beside Layla. He sat in the living room, lights off, the sound of the city outside humming like a lullaby of truth. Zayed's pain wasn't rebellion. It was memory. It was grief. But something still didn't sit right. The way Layla said complicated. The way she brushed past it. Ahmed wasn't sure why, but he had a feeling this story wasn't just about a boy who lost his father. It was about a secret no one dared to say aloud. Days passed, but the unease did not. Ahmed began to notice things he hadn't before. Phone calls Layla would take in hushed tones. The way Zayed avoided him even more than usual. Whispers that weren't there but somehow echoed in every room of their home. One afternoon, Ahmed took a walk through the winding lanes near Al-Wazil Road. It was a quiet part of the city, far removed from the bustle of downtown. He needed space to think, to breathe. But thoughts of Kareem, the accident, and the photo clawed at his mind like sand in a storm. He stopped at a small cafe he hadn't noticed before. The kind of place that felt like it didn't belong in Dubai. Rustic, shaded, anonymous. As he stirred his tea, he heard a voice behind him. "You're Layla's husband, aren't you?" Ahmed turned, startled. A man, mid-40s, with a sunburned face and tired eyes, sat at the next table. "I knew Kareem," the man said, offering a brittle smile. "We used to work together. Real estate. Long time ago." Ahmed blinked. "You knew her first husband?" The man nodded, looking into his cup like it held old ghosts. "He was a good man. But things got messy near the end. Lot of debts. Some wrong people involved. Layla tried to protect Zayed from all that. Probably still is." Ahmed leaned forward. "What kind of people?" The man's eyes narrowed. "The kind that don't forget, even after you're gone." A chill spread through Ahmed's chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," the man whispered, "that the accident might not have been an accident." Before Ahmed could speak, the man stood up and walked away, disappearing into the late afternoon crowd like a shadow fading with the sun. Back home, Ahmed sat across from Layla in silence for minutes that felt like hours. She noticed the change in his gaze. "You met someone," she said quietly. He nodded. "A man who knew Kareem. He said Kareem owed people money. Dangerous people." Layla's face tightened. "That's not your concern." "It is now." Layla looked down. "I did what I had to do to protect Zayed. That's all that matters." Ahmed's heart pounded. Every wall in their home seemed to lean in listening, watching. If what the stranger said was true, then Zayed wasn't just mourning a father. He was growing up in the shadow of a man whose death may have been deliberate. And Layla might know more than she ever let on. The next day, Ahmed couldn't focus at work. Spreadsheets and emails blurred together, lost in a fog of doubt. The conversation at the cafe kept replaying in his head, and Layla's words from the night before refused to settle. That evening, he made a decision. After dinner, when Zayed was locked away in his room as usual, Ahmed sat with Layla in the living room. She knew something was coming. His expression was calm, but his eyes sharp like glass. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Not half of it. All of it. Who was Kareem really?" Layla looked exhausted. She reached for her glass of water, but her hand trembled slightly. Kareem was charming, driven. He had big dreams. Wanted to build a name in Dubai's real estate scene. And for a while, he did. Ahmed didn't speak. He waited. But he got greedy, she continued. Started borrowing. Gambling. Deals with the wrong kind of men. Russian investors. Lebanese fixers. People who smile until you owe them something. Her voice cracked. I begged him to stop. For Zayed. But he didn't listen. I think he was trying to get out when it happened. The crash? Layla nodded. Late one night, he was driving home from Sharjah. Zayed was with him. Witnesses said he was speeding, maybe chased. The car flipped off a bridge. Ahmed's brow furrowed. That's not what the police report says. She blinked. You saw the report?
No.
I tried. It's sealed. Confidential. Layla fell silent. That silence was louder than anything she had said. I need to know, Layla. Was it just an accident? Or were they trying to silence him? Her reply came only after a long pause. I don't know. I swear. But I've always wondered. And I've always been afraid. Ahmed stood. He wasn't angry. Just resolved. I'm going to find out. Layla looked up, her face pale.
Why?
What good will it do? Because your son is drowning in something no one will name. And it's time someone did. That night, Ahmed didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of their bed, searching late into the night. Forums, archived news articles, expat message boards. Anything connected to Kareem's last months. He found pieces, fragments. Mentions of deals that vanished. A construction project halted suddenly. A rumor of a missing accountant who worked under Kareem. But one name kept coming up. Rafiq Jaber, an investor based in Dara, known for his ties to old money and older threats. Ahmed stared at the screen. If there were answers, they would begin with him. It took Ahmed 3 days to track down Rafiq Jaber. He wasn't listed in any public records under his own name. No social media. No photos. But through a former client at his law firm, Ahmed managed to get a number. And a warning. If you go looking for Rafiq, be sure you know what you're asking for. He called the number. A male voice answered, clipped and formal. Ahmed introduced himself simply, saying he was researching a case involving a man named Kareem Al-Fardan. There was a pause. Then the voice told him to be at a majlis in Dara the following night. No details, no explanation. Just an address and a time. The next evening, Ahmed drove to the older part of the city. Dara was nothing like the polished towers of downtown. It was older, lived in, tangled with spice shops and gold merchants. The building was low and narrow, tucked between a shuttered tailor and a forgotten electronics shop. Inside, the air was thick with oud and silence. Men sat on cushions, dressed in white, their faces worn with experience and something colder, memory. A tall man at the end of the room nodded when Ahmed entered. That was him, Rafiq. You are the second husband, Rafiq said calmly. Ahmed nodded. I need to understand what happened to Kareem. For Zayed. Rafiq sipped his tea, then set the cup down slowly. What happened is what happens to those who promise more than they can deliver. He was trying to fix things, Ahmed said. Trying to get out. Rafiq raised an eyebrow. Out is a door not everyone gets to find. Kareem made mistakes. He knew the terms. When he failed, others paid the price. Ahmed swallowed hard. Did you have him killed? A murmur spread through the room. Rafiq did not flinch. You ask bold questions. But it was not me. And it was not murder. The road was wet. The brakes failed. The police found no proof otherwise. But you know something? Ahmed insisted. Rafiq leaned forward, his tone quiet but firm. The truth is not a thing people owe you, Mr. Ahmed. Especially not those who've buried it for years. There was a long silence. Then Rafiq added, Layla knew. Not everything, but enough. She begged me to leave Zayed out of it. And I did. That boy has been shielded more than you realize. Ahmed stood, his fists clenched at his sides. You say he's been shielded, but he's broken. He's angry. He's afraid of ghosts no one will name. Rafiq looked up, his expression unreadable. Then perhaps it is time someone told him the truth. Ahmed didn't speak during the drive home. Dara's old roads slipped past in silence, streetlights flashing like memories, cold and fleeting. By the time he reached the apartment, the city had quieted, but his thoughts had not. Layla was asleep. Zayed's door was closed, but light bled through the gap beneath it. Ahmed stood outside the room for a long moment, then knocked once, firmly. There was no answer. I'm coming in, he said. Zayed was at his desk, headphones on, hoodie pulled over his head. He didn't turn when Ahmed entered, but he paused the music. What? The boy muttered. Ahmed closed the door behind him. I spoke to someone today. Someone who knew your father. Zayed stiffened. Ahmed continued. His name was Rafiq Jaber. That made Zayed turn, his expression unreadable. I've heard that name. Ahmed nodded. He told me things. About your father's business. About the people he crossed. Zayed didn't blink. So what? You digging up old ghosts now? No, Ahmed said gently. I'm unburying what should have never been buried. You deserve to know why your life changed. Why he died. Why you've been carrying anger no one dared to explain. Zayed stood abruptly. You think this is about business? Debt? He was my dad. He was everything. And no one told me anything. No one. I know, Ahmed said, voice steady. And I'm sorry. Silence fell between them. Then Zayed whispered, I remember the crash. I never told Mum, but I do. I remember the headlights, the shouting on the phone, his voice saying, we're not going to run anymore. Then the road flipped, and the silence. I thought I was dead. Ahmed felt a deep, quiet ache in his chest. No one should carry that alone, he said softly. Zayed looked down. She thought protecting me meant hiding everything, but it made it worse. Every time I saw her smile, it felt like she forgot him, like I was the only one still bleeding. Ahmed stepped closer. You're not alone anymore. Zayed didn't reply right away. Then, with a cracked voice, he said, Do you think he would have got us out if they hadn't caught him? Ahmed hesitated, then spoke honestly.
He tried.
That's what matters. He didn't give up on you. Zayed sat back down, drained. For the first time, he didn't tell Ahmed to leave. He didn't shut the door. And that, Ahmed thought, was something. 2 days passed. The air in the apartment had changed. Not lighter, not yet, but quieter. Zayed wasn't warm, but he wasn't cold anymore. And that, Ahmed knew, was something to build from. That Friday morning, while Layla was out for errands, Ahmed was looking for a warranty file in the hallway cabinet when he noticed the old safe, hidden beneath some towels, nearly forgotten. He hadn't opened it in years. Layla had given him the combination once, long ago, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he remembered it.
Click.
Inside were old passports, jeweler boxes, a bundle of legal papers, and a small, weathered envelope, sealed and yellowing with time. On the front,
For Zayed.
When he's ready. In Kareem's handwriting. Ahmed stared at it for a long moment. He sat down on the edge of the bed and opened it slowly, carefully. Inside was a single page, handwritten in Arabic. The words were shaky but deliberate, like a man writing to time itself. He read it twice. Then he folded it again, placed it back in the envelope, and set it on Zayed's desk that night. He said nothing. The next morning, Zayed didn't join them for breakfast, but he didn't slam his door either. Midday, Ahmed heard a soft knock on his study door. Zayed stood there, envelope in hand, eyes red but calm. He wrote this the week before he died, Zayed said quietly. Ahmed nodded. I figured. He knew, Zayed whispered. He knew it might happen. He was scared, but he wasn't running anymore. Zayed sat on the floor, legs crossed like he used to as a boy. He said he wasn't proud of everything, but he never stopped loving us. And that if anything happened to him, I should never let hate be the thing that remembers him. Ahmed sat beside him. The sun filtered through the blinds, striping the room in pale gold. I hated him for dying, Zayed said. And I hated Mum for pretending everything was fine.
But now,
I don't know what to feel. You don't have to decide today, Ahmed said. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore either. Zayed nodded, slow and quiet. Then, as if something loosened inside him, he whispered, Thank you. Ahmed looked at him. Anytime. It wasn't peace.
Not yet.
But it was truth. And that was the first real thing they'd shared. Weeks had passed. The tension that once crept through the corners of the apartment had begun to dissolve. Zayed wasn't the same boy. He still had his silences, but now they were filled with thought, not rage. Layla, too, had softened, perhaps sensing the shift between her son and husband, though she never asked. But silence, even the calm kind, can be deceptive. One Thursday evening, they decided to walk together through City Walk, a modern stretch of cafes and high-end shops that glowed beneath strings of soft amber light. Layla suggested it, perhaps hoping to stitch something normal back into their lives. Zayed walked a little ahead, hands in pockets, eyes scanning people more than buildings. Looks different at night, he said, almost to himself. Ahmed caught up beside him. So do you. Zayed gave the smallest smile. They stopped at an outdoor cafe. Layla ordered saffron tea, Zayed picked at a pastry, and Ahmed just watched. There was a moment, just a breath, where they almost looked like a family, until a man passed their table.
Tall. Thin.
Black suit. Zayed froze. His face paled, and the pastry fell from his hand. Ahmed saw it too. The man gave a passing glance, not stopping, not speaking. But in that single moment, Zayed's body went rigid. "Who was that?" Ahmed asked gently. Zayed didn't speak. His eyes stayed locked on the man's back as he turned into a narrow side street. "Zayed." Ahmed pressed. "Do you know him?" Zayed stood up. "I've seen him."
Once.
"At the hospital. After the crash." Ahmed rose too. "Are you sure?" Zayed nodded slowly. "He was talking to Mom. I never asked who he was. But now I remember his face." Ahmed turned to Layla. She looked shaken but tried to stay composed. "Layla," he said. "Who was that man?" Layla's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Zayed's voice broke the silence. "He's not just a memory, is he?" Layla exhaled, her shoulders heavy with a weight she no longer had the strength to hold.
"He worked with Kareem," she said at last.
"He handled payments. After Kareem died, he came to me, said things weren't finished, that debts remain even after the dead are buried." Zayed's voice rose. "And you've been paying him?" "No," she said quickly. "Not with money. But I've kept quiet. For years. Hoping that silence would be enough." Ahmed took a step forward. "But it's not, is it?" Layla shook her head. "They never truly go away." The man had vanished into the shadows. But the storm he left behind had only begun. And for the first time, Zayed realized his father's past wasn't dead. It was alive. And walking just a few steps behind them, the days after City Walk were restless. Zayed kept to himself more, his thoughts swirling like the tides of Dubai Creek. Ahmed watched closely, knowing that some storms gather quietly before the fiercest winds. One evening, Layla received a call. The voice was cold, unfamiliar, but with an edge that sent a shiver down her spine. "They know you're digging," the caller said. "Stop, or things get worse." She ended the call without a word. Ahmed and Zayed were watching. "We can't run from this," Ahmed said. "No," Layla agreed, "but neither can we face it blindly." They decided to meet Rafiq Jaber again, the man who had once worked with Kareem. He was elusive but willing to talk under one condition: meet at the old boatyards by the creek at midnight. That night, the sky was a deep blue velvet. The air smelled of salt and diesel. Ahmed, Layla, and Zayed arrived together, hearts pounding in sync. Rafiq was waiting, shadowed by the flickering light of a lone lantern. His face was lined with years of secrets. "You're getting close," he warned. "What happened to Kareem?" Ahmed asked. "Why did it all go wrong?" Rafiq sighed. "He was a man who wanted more than he could hold. His debts weren't just money. They were promises broken, loyalties betrayed. And some people don't forgive." Zayed clenched his fists. "Did he try to protect us?" Rafiq's eyes softened. "More than you know. But sometimes protection costs more than you think." Suddenly, a noise from the shadows startled them. Someone was watching. The night held its breath. And in the dark, the past whispered louder than ever. The tension at the boatyards had broken something loose. Ahmed, Layla, and Zayed left with more questions than answers, but a new resolve settled in their bones. Days later, a message arrived, anonymous, simple, chilling. "Meet at Al-Fahidi midnight. Come alone." Ahmed looked at Layla and Zayed. The weight was heavy. They knew this was the final reckoning. Zayed's voice was steady. "I'm coming." That night, under the ancient walls of Al-Fahidi Fort, the trio parted. Layla stayed behind, heart pounding in the quiet apartment, while Ahmed and Zayed made their way through narrow alleys lit only by flickering lanterns. The air was thick with salt and danger. At the appointed time, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the man from City Walk, the messenger of the debts that never died. "You've uncovered too much," he said, "but it's not too late to walk away." Zayed stepped forward.
"No.
"We're here to end this." The man's smile was thin, cold. "Ending it means paying the price. Are you ready?" Ahmed's hand found Zayed's shoulder. "We face it together." The man nodded slowly and handed over a worn folder. Inside were documents, names, dates, evidence that could dismantle the shadows that had haunted Kareem's legacy. But as they turned to leave, footsteps echoed. More men emerged, blocking their path. The final storm had arrived.